two bad losses with two different quarterbacks. So to me, that points to Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, tonight in this situation, I would say by about midway through the second quarter, when the possession's just going back and forth. I mean, at one point in time, Guy, I wrote down that this was in the third quarter. Tirico drops. That was the Broncos' 7th 3-and-out. 7 3-and-outs. And obviously a long period of time. I don't know if the Niners ever got a third down. They did not have a third down conversion. And it was like, Kyle, part of the reason we think highly of you is your variation of plays. And it felt like he wanted to keep everything simple because he's on the road against a really good defense. But then there comes a moment where I just think, and we noticed this at anyone that, like I was doing, talking shit about Russell Wilson the entire game. One thing was clear after the dust settled, like you couldn't just bank on him having unlimited awful series. Like he was just going to pull something out of his ass, and he did. He found some ingredients, and he cooked a drive, he scored a touchdown, which ultimately was the difference in the game. And Kyle basically called the entire game like he was never going to find any ingredients, and they were just never going to score, maybe hit a field goal or two, right? That like basically once they got to 7, that as long as they hit like one more field goal, probably going to win. Like there was the one play where they ran something to Debo. He almost went like Shady McCoy ball security, and I couldn't tell, like, are they going to have him throw? But no, he didn't. He just ran. He did like 2 360s, and he got like a yard. I don't blame Debo. I mean, it was just nothing was there. There was a play at one point in time in the game where he just ran like he just kept going kind of basic plays to Debo, like run plays. Like what the fuck are we doing here? Do you have some sort of Kittle throwback? To me, this was the type game that forever with the Patriots, with Brady, for example, back when Josh was used to winning, when they were in this game, they would have the one curveball play at the right moment. Kyle had it last year, right, with the double pass with Debo. Like that's what this game called for. Just kind of a play out of your ass, like, oh my God, that worked. And sometimes if you watch football for the last 48 hours, sometimes those plays don't work, right? The double pass, throw back to the quarterback. I saw it a lot in college, saw it a couple times a day. And sometimes you just got to throw it away. But today, they didn't do anything. It was the most vanilla consistency of call. And I get, as Jimmy's getting shittier, you're getting terrified. But to not have any curveballs, I don't know, Guy. I mean, for a guy that makes a ton of money and is known as one of the best offensive coaches, in that game, you got to at least try a curveball. That was my thing. Just try it. Try something. And everything was so vanilla. And then when they got into go-to passing situations, I don't know. I just don't love Jimmy just in shotgun with the, backup offensive lineman and McGlinchey who can't barely touch the soul. Like, what do you guys think is going to happen? He was constantly just getting, like, I'm not trying to defend Jimmy here, but they were in his fucking dome, not constantly. And he also made some terrible throws separate from that, but they were getting pressure nonstop. They were getting more pressure in the second half than I feel like the Niners were. Now, the Broncos offensive line on the whole, especially with Trent Williams out, is actually pretty good. I mean, it's considered one of the better ones in the NFL. But the Niners offensive line was getting cooked. And it's like, to me, when you're Kyle, like, you got to try some different shit. You can't let's just throw 3 5-step drop, hope McKivitz and McGlinchey can hold on for dear life. Like, no, it's Randy Gregory looks like he's, I don't know, Von Miller or something.
Kyle, now we're talking about Kyle here. Jimmy missed multiple throws on like Debo screen plays, right? Where Debo's coming back, but they were a mess.
Did those feel like that was going to work though?
No, they were a mess.
Airmailed Jimmy by about a lot.
I texted you early in the game after they had that scoring drive. Either they're not going to score again. This is my text. I find the text. Either they're not scoring again or they're going to blow them out. Because we've all seen it, right? You and I have seen it a million times. We've talked about it. The drive that you score on that you scripted is not the same as all the rest of the drives that you're going to have.
Tried and true formula in the NFL, right?
And I don't know. I don't want to overly simplify. Did you go in thinking this was going to be a pushover game with Denver? Russ was so bad. You just kept feeling like there's no possible way you're going to lose. And so maybe you had less urgency offensively to take any risks or do anything different because you thought maybe your defense was going to hold up. But if that's what you're thinking, that is so unfair to your defense to ask them to hold up for 4 quarters against a guy who, even though he's washed, we saw it again today. Wash Russ can still beat you in a close game because he can still get away and make a play, right? So when he escapes and makes a 24-yard throw, whatever the hell, scramble. Oh, the Kinlaw play. Kinlaw had him. Kinlaw shoves the offensive lineman out of the way. It's him and Russ. And Russ just boop, boop. 3rd down and 10, boom, 27-yarder because you can only cover for so long. So, I don't know if that was part of the mindset. They're like,
that for the Denver offense, wouldn't you say that was the play of the game?
Yeah, it was 4 minutes left. Well, I
It-
guess it was like 5.5 minutes left.
But it was just a miraculous kind of scramble.
play,
It was vintage Russ. Because some of his runs, they were kind of nice, but pretty clear he's moving slow. There just wasn't any. I think he does not want to run. There was just no one there, right? Even Greenlaw was actually, you could tell, way back. Like, he's in coverage. He's coming up. Pretty good. I mean, that was a great open field tackle. Now, Russell doesn't have as much shimmy anymore, but you have to. That's a fantastic open field tackle. But then he did it again a couple plays later. He is really slow. To me, sitting here right now, the more I let this marinate, losing to a fat Russ, that if I just told you before the season started, before we even knew he was cooked, right? I don't know if he's quite cooked, but he's a shell of himself, which is still probably better than a lot of quarterbacks, but he's nowhere near.
Can still have moments. Yeah, I mean.
But he's what we saw 2 or 3 years ago doesn't look remotely close to that, right? If I told you that they were going to play Russell Wilson Sunday night, regardless who the quarterback is, their offense is going to score 9 points and Russ is going to have 1 touchdown drive. You'd be like, Niners going to win like 24-10? How would the Niners lose that game? You would find a hard scenario for the Niners to lose a game if I told you before we had ever seen the Broncos or Hackett play a game together, 9 points on offense and Russ 1 touchdown drive. Other than that, if I told you, here's the other thing, guy, constantly getting made fun of on social media, everyone making fun that he can't cook on his own. Because how could you not? 7 3-and-outs. There was one play on a 3rd down where, I mean, a basic NFL throw, he jimmied it. Jerry Jeudy was wide open, like a quick out.
Yeah.
He threw it like behind him. I've been watching Russell Wilson his whole career. Listen, you can say whatever you want about him, even in his heyday. He hit that throw with his eyes closed in his peak, right?
Right.
What is going on? And you lose to that? Like, Kyle, you can't lose to that. Like, and the football's a team game and all, but there's a moment where D'Amico, again, he's the highest character guy in the league. So he's like, Kyle helped traject his career, but holy shit. I mean, that's an all-time. You said to me before we hopped on, is that the worst loss in Kyle's career? No, let's throw out the first couple years, but like since they've had expectations, feels like that's up there, right?
I mean, without doing the hard search of it, it does feel like it's a candidate to be the worst.
They had a Colts loss last year that was pretty bad. Remember, in the rain and Wentz.
Yeah, I think part of what makes this one feel bad is you just went to Jimmy, and we've talked about it. There've been the stories. Maybe some people in the Silver wrote, some people in the locker room think Jimmy might be better. Now, people I know hate Silver. I talked to a guy 2 days ago who talked to. Those stories are not real. Put it that way. Someone who knows people in that.
We've already acknowledged.
I understand, but people. Okay, I'm just saying, like, that was not just Mike Silver that reported that, but that's people were saying that.
But who thinks those are fake? Beside a couple people,
I forget about whether it's fake or not. I'm just saying I talked to somebody who knows, and they told me that's not fake. But you're right. I don't know
about what specifically.
About some players thinking that Jimmy gave them a better chance to win. That's not fake. That's not Silver made it up. Tyler says, stop blaming this on coaching. Blaming this on coaching and not Jimmy is ridiculous. Hold Jimmy to the same, if not a higher standard. Jimmy lost this game by a mile. Don't worry. We will get to Jimmy. It's more about Kyle doesn't get completely off. This is his team. This is not year 1. This is year 6. Say what you want, Nathaniel Hackett. They didn't want him. It's his 3rd game coaching a team, and he just beat, Kyle Shanahan, who handpicked the 49ers to be his organization.
He did hire a retired guy to run his clock.
He did. We're not like these games. We talk about these games first and foremost, and then the big picture. I do wonder if part of what we saw today is why Kyle ran Trey as much as he did run Trey Lance in week 2, right? Like, are you getting something with Trey's legs that Jimmy's arm does not make up for? I think all of us watch Trey, and this is not about Trey necessarily, but all of us watch Trey and thought, ideally, you would get it all with the arm. But it's not like Jimmy gives you everything with his arm, right? And maybe some of what we saw offensively today is an example of why Trey Lance, why the game plan for Trey Lance was to run so much, right? Especially, remember, we talked about this offensive line and its struggles, and maybe Trey's legs would help them with that. Well, we won't find out for another year whether or not Trey Lance's legs will help them with that. But, this not surprisingly looks like the roller coaster ride that Kyle Shanahan, for better or worse, has captained for many years, right? He's been the captain of some roller coaster rides, and 2022 is already one.
Yeah, you know what's bizarre about his career? His highs are really high. And I'm not talking about like overall result of like a season going to Super Bowl. I'm talking about like individual games. Like you leave a game, you go, God damn, Kyle Shanahan. Woohoo, Jesus. And his lows are like, I mean, Nate Hackett lows, Josh McDaniels Raiders lows. Like his lows are low. Like this is a complete embarrassment. Not the overall team because their defense is consistently pretty good, but ultimately we judge him off the offense. Like one thing I've always said about head coaching, because it's like I was making fun of the Raiders on Twitter. Someone's like, well, you're not watching it's the defense. Like when you're the head coach, everything is under your umbrella. It's why Hightower was on Kyle. Like if you're going to hire your friend from college and your special teams is going to be a joke, I can make fun of Hightower all I want, but ultimately the buck starts with you. Like you're choosing to not put this at a higher priority. And to me, like you said, Trey Lance broke his ankle. Now, people blamed it on the running, and I've seen a lot of former NFL people come out and defend it like, so it's football. He's a running quarterback. The whole part of drafting him was to get a dual threat. That's why we pounded the table to not get Mac Jones. And then when he starts running him, it's not safe enough. It's like, holy fuck. Like he's not fast enough to go outside. It's a freak deal. He had a terrible ankle injury. But all these running quarterbacks, they run it all over the place. Would he run outside sweeps if he could all game long? Of course he could. He just wasn't able to get outside. So they felt the best play, and it didn't fit. I understand if you want to be critical of running up the gut. I just don't understand his other runs. He's a dual-threat quarterback. Now, with Jimmy's not a dual-threat quarterback. So if he's not going to run the ball, he has to throw it. And as we saw today, brings back immediate memories, like his throwing can be all over the map. Now, you also got to then call plays within that, and I kept saying this last year on special teams, like try a trick play just to try to spark some shit. And it's like, Kyle, where was your trick play tonight? Just your quarterback is swimming. Your offensive line feels outmatched. Sometimes when you're in that situation, like why do some basketball teams historically run like in college, the run and gun? Because they don't have the horses if you're in the SEC to go up against Kentucky, right? Or go up against Duke if you're in their comp. You got to do something different. You can't run the same offense. Historically, like why did some coaches run the wing T or back in the day, Leach? Now a lot of more teams do it. It's to try to like give yourself an advantage. Well, in the NFL, for the most part, most teams are relatively close. So when you find yourself in an independent game that is just like one thing can swing one way or the other, you got to kind of pull something out of your ass. Especially your quarterback's getting worked, your offensive line's getting worked, and your defense is literally keeping you in the game. Like I'm thinking like the only one way they're going to win it is like, can they get a pick six or can they get a fumble six? And when you think that, you're in a bad spot in the game when that's what you're kind of depending on, right? Because ultimately the Denver got what they needed in the touchdown drive. Like I kept saying, like, do they have a touchdown drive in them? No one was very confident by the second half, right? They had a touchdown drive in them. But you always think like maybe
I did
Debo
think that Russ had a play in him.
I was always I was kind of like maybe he's just this cooked, and then I remembered like he still does have a play in him. The only thing that gave me hope is like maybe Debo could like make three guys miss. But Denver's defense is really good. They're very fast. They're good up front. They have team speed everywhere. They have good DBs. Like even the play Jimmy skipped, which was an atrocious pass to Ayuk on like the one, it was like 3rd and 13 and the comeback.
Yeah.
Ayuk was open, but by a little bit. But I mean, that pass was a complete embarrassment. But like guys this wasn't a wide open game for any team.
I saw the Debo shallow over the middle, which might have been a touchdown, was I think maybe someone will correct me. I think the worst miss of the night. It was a 3rd and short. Debo's open and he throws it behind him.
I agree. That was a bad miss, but the result of the pick at the end of the game where he throws it right to the DB.
Yeah.
That was pretty bad.
Yeah. And here's the other thing. Watching that game, we can. Well, I won't. Let's.
Here's the thing though. Like that comment you just put up, you need an offensive line to put away the game against both teams, right? The Broncos got a rushing TD to ultimately win the game, but they didn't rush that drive. Why? You're not rushing on the Niners. What could the 49ers do tonight? It's hard to rush on good defenses, right? Especially by the second half, any defensive coordinator worth their salt starts cheating everyone up. What did Collinsworth say to the game? Have you noticed, to Mike, or maybe speaking to just the people, Hufanga, they can just cheat him up around the line of scrimmage because they're getting good coverage on the outside. Well, the Broncos, same thing. They got good DBs, so you can cheat people up near the line of scrimmage. So what happens? You don't just have 4 defensive linemen and a couple linebackers. You actually got an extra guy, or maybe two, depending on, how aggressive they are being against the run. So what do you got to do? You have to make plays in the air or do something, some sort of, when I say trickeration, I don't mean like a triple pass. I just mean something outside of the box. Neither team did. Russ just did a couple Houdini plays, and obviously Jimmy and the 49ers did not have any Houdini just based out of their normal plays, and Kyle's not calling any, thing outside of the box.